Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Reset India with your host, Kruti Mishra. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the Union Budget 2021-22 with an aim to give fillip to government's disinvestment agenda. She announced several policy measures, including privatization of 2 banks and 1 general insurance company, along with asset monetization. The government has also maintained that the new disinvestment policy is aimed at economic growth and employment creation rather than plugging the fiscal deficit. And to discuss the way ahead, I'm joined by Professor Charan Singh, CEO, IGROW Foundation, Mr. Yaduvendra Mathur, former Special Secretary, Niti Aayog, and Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, President of the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Welcome to Asaba Television, all of you. And before we commence our discussion, few important highlights for our viewers. So, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a disinvestment target of 1.75 lakh crore for financial year 2022 in her budget speech. The target includes disinvestment of 2 state-owned banks and 1 insurance company. Government has released a new public sector enterprise policy under which atomic energy, space, defence, transport and telecom, power, petro, coal and other minerals, banking, insurance and financial services will be classified as strategic sectors. The remaining companies in strategic sectors will be considered for privatization or merger or closure, and non-strategic sectors will be considered for privatization where feasible or for closure. Niti Aayog will make representations with respect to CPECs under strategic sectors. Niti Aayog's recommendations will be considered by a core group of secretaries on disinvestment. In strategic sectors, the minimum presence of existing companies at the holding level will be retained under government control. So let's go back to our guest now. And Professor Charan, coming to you first. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has clarified that the government is not dismantling PSUs. Rather, it is lending support, lending strength through a concrete policy framework, infusing new capital and also professionalism. Your take, sir.
I totally agree with the FM on this issue. In a country which is passing through the phase that we are all passing, the emerging market economy, where tax collections will not be there as much as would have been in normal times, and that's happening across the world, where deficits are rising, borrowing has increased, the government has to fire on all engines. This investment is in that direction. It serves 2 purposes. Firstly, it does bring in professionalism. It helps the increasing participation of the private sector, and that helps in asking questions and maintaining high standards. It also helps the government, so the fiscal pressure on the government is reduced. In such a situation, I think this investment is the right strategy which the government has adopted, and the rationale which the FM has given, which you just mentioned, I think is in the right direction, right spirit.
All right, so it is in the right direction and right spirit. Mr. Mathur, the government has set a target of disinvestment of 1.75 lakh crore rupees. How difficult or how easy it is?
Yes, so this is, very remarkable announcement in the budget, and the entire backing of all arms of the government appears for the first time with the Ministry of Finance, the Department of Disinvestment. See, disinvestment has always been a difficult task to execute. But I have no doubt in my mind that the target of 175 would be achieved. There is complete clarity in the process. The commitment is there. The right kind of leadership, and I would really compliment all the secretaries in the ministries of finance. I have personal acquaintance with with most of them, and I can say that they are absolutely committed, and it takes a lot of hard work. And the DIPAM secretary in a recent interview is quite categorical. I think they've put their shoulder to the wheel, and 1,75,000 crores shall be achieved.
Mr. Agarwal, do you agree, given the COVID situation?
No, so you see, even in spite of the COVID, the work never stopped in these core ministries. They have done their paperwork. They have to go to the parliament with some approvals. You see how the airports were disinvested. That was done, and that sent the right signal. It gave the confidence. And the monetization of existing assets through the InvIT route, the REITs and InvITs, that pipeline that was mentioned, a lot of work has been done. And I think now the paperwork and the private sector has to come in with and because these assets should be picked up by Indian companies, Indian investors, Indian capital should get in, and I have no doubt that the market is ready. There are very serious contenders. There's a lot of serious work, and this is a game changer. Two banks going in for strategic disinvestment, great assets, highways and more airports. So it could never have been better for private capital to come in and pick up. It's not as if the debt to GDP ratio in India is too high. We should have more debt, but that debt should not be sitting on the books of the government, central government or state government. The private sector for infrastructure has to be accessing either debt or equity. This budget, the whole framework of strategic disinvestment, clear roadmap, clear articulation that non-strategic sectors government will completely get out. What a push it has given to the stock. You see the enthusiasm in the market. Now the next stage is to really get the rubber to hit the road, as they say. And I'm sure we will see in the next 2 months a lot of action.
All right, sir, you made very important points there, and let me take that to Mr. Agarwal. Mr. Agarwal, as Mr. Mathur says, this is going to be a game changer. Of course, markets welcomed it, but it is the time for the private sector to step in. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, I agree with most of what Mr. Mathur said and what Professor Charan Singh also said. I think overall there has been a very, sense of positivity in the markets, in the trade and industry about the whole budget and including this disinvestment targets, as also the monetization route that has been mentioned, as Mathur Saab said, through REITs and InvITs. I think the announcement of a special purpose vehicle to identify such excess assets for disinvest or divestment rather, and to then put it in that company would also be an excellent step. Overall, our feeling is that private sector, as of now, I have slight doubts whether the private sector is immediately in a position to be investing on a large scale. The reason being that the COVID setback, as also the downturn in the GDP growth rates during the preceding quarters prior to COVID also, the private industry mostly has got lots of unutilized capacity. What is going to really turbocharge the economy right now is the investment into infrastructure, initially by the government. Once that process starts, and I think sufficient funds are being provided for in the budget, we are looking at a 35% increase in infrastructure capex spend in the current budget, firstly. Secondly, in addition to that, if we total up the capex numbers, if we add up the extra budgetary resources that are being used for capex, for railways and other resources, the number goes up to something like 11 lakh crores plus. So, and then add to that the new DFI, which is supposed to raise 5 lakh crores, hopefully, within the next 3 years. Now, we have those numbers. Now, all these numbers initially should be, and we hope will be raised initially at least by the government. Now, once you set a virtuous cycle rolling, once you set up the demand in the market, then the private sector has no choice but to enter. You see, the private sector is always going to invest where they see profit. No amount of motivation will work unless they see a profit, and they will see a profit when they see the demand coming. And so that's our hope, and I think that is what the budget also seems to indicate.
All right, before I move ahead,
you
you mentioned a very important point of unutilized capacity. Mr. Mathur, the conundrum of unutilized capacity continues.
No, so Mr. Agarwal is right that there is capacity, but that's in manufacturing. And I think the what we're talking is about, infrastructure and assets, which would be, let's say, the public sector, let's say BPCL is being disinvested. Now that is existing capacity. It's only a question of the construction risk, as it were, being taken away. And now you have a great asset available for the private sector to operate.
Absolutely.
So those kind of things, if you see, it is not a question of these assets being put to something other than their intended use. They will be put to the same use they were being put. Even if the public sectors, which are getting strategically disinvested, you will have top class human resource. In fact, the public sectors of India have been the nursery from which all the top class private sector executives came. So we have to really be clear that what the government is doing is actually de-risking the infrastructure sector. And Mr. Agarwal is right, and what Dr. Charan Singh also said, this dose of fresh investment in infrastructure was reluctant because of a early stage construction risk and completion risk. Now that has been very smartly dealt with. Let new greenfields come by the public sector, but as soon as they're ready, they reach commercial commissioning, they should be immediately given up for long-term ownership to the private sector. Because private sector can operate it efficiently. The construction de-risking can be done by the government and its parastatals. And that is what the takeout finance strategy that was, it was being talked about for nearly 20 years.
Yes.
But it is only now that it is absolutely clear that government may build assets, but then they will quickly give it away to the private sector to manage for the long term, releasing the money which was spent so that government can take on new assets for construction, because the demand for public infrastructure is huge. We have to become a 5 trillion economy and then a 10 trillion economy. It will not happen if real world-class infrastructure doesn't come.
Of course, and I agree that will have a multiplier impact. But Professor Charan, talking about monetization, now we agree that idle assets will not contribute to Atmanirbhar Bharat. The non-core assets, of course, include huge parcels of land. Now, Finance Minister has also talked about National Asset Monetization Pipeline. What will it entail, sir?
So firstly, I want to continue with the discussion that was being done by Mr. Mathur as well as Mr. Agarwal.
Go ahead, sir.
See, the government in its stated budget policy was very clear. It said it wants to create new investment space for the private sector. Now, when it says that, it is obvious what is the intention. Look at the bigger picture. There was a time when we were following the socialist ideology and everything public sector had to be in. Then we gave way to the private sector to join in the growth process shoulder to shoulder. There was some reluctance, some shyness, some hesitation, and obviously, as Mr. Mathur put it so elegantly, that there was some risk. And what the government did is, government did the big investment and now is giving it to the private sector to run it, because the feeling is that the private sector can do it far more efficient. So that is one thing which I like in this transition from the socialist ideology to the most modern ideology. The time has come when the private sector will have to contribute shoulder to shoulder in the growth process of the economy. It's just not a $5 trillion economy that we are aiming at. We are aiming at a $10 trillion economy in 10 years. But what is our long-term vision? Our long-term vision is not just $10 trillion economy. If we have to, and this is in the Indian DNA, which I always say, that we were the richest country on the planet for 3,000 years, out of which for 1,000 years we were accounting for 33% of world GDP. America only accounts for 20% of world GDP today. How did we achieve that? And how did we sustain that? That was because private sector contributed aggressively. The government should basically be, as the government puts it, in minimum activities. It's not the business of the government to be making biscuits and bread. So the government should, in a transitional pattern, in a gradual way, get out of these things and do specialized things in which the government should be there. So they are very right in identifying, saying in the strategic areas, from the 300 odd companies that are there, we will reduce it to only 24. And the private sector gets opportunity, gets profit opportunities to participate in India's growth story. I think that's the most important thing. Now, the specific question that you said.
Yes, sir.
The specific question on monetization, you see, when assets are sitting idle in the country, be it gold and gold monetization scheme the government came out with, be it land, be it houses built under various public entities, be it the stadium, be it some road areas. I think the best thing is that the government, and it's right in its correction, is offering these things to the private sector and monetizing these things. So what is going to happen? Once again, these augment resources. Firstly, I congratulate the government in identifying the areas to augment the resources that can then help in building the infrastructure of the country as well as assisting social sector and social expenditure. So to my mind, this is a great move. This may take some time. For example, if you want to monetize a stadium or you want to monetize a tract of road, these are challenges again. But then this is the way forward to monetize the existing assets and then augment your resources.
All right, sir. You made a very important point there, but I'd also like to talk about the PSE policy. Mr. Mathur, Finance Minister, provided clarity on the PSE policy in the budget. The impact of this policy in reaping rich economic dividends.
Most certainly, because this is, it's the ownership that will be widely held. It was once the President of India holds it, in a way, when the public sector is, the shares are in the name of the President of India. And now the shares will actually be held by the people of India. So that's the shift. It's still ultimately the people hold the assets. Even when the President of India holds the asset, is like a trustee. But the shift would be that on the books it would not be like public sector debt. Why the rating agencies and others are concerned about India, because the private sector debt can go up many times. The public sector or the central and state government debt, that will come down. If you see that macro shift, it would take maybe 5 years, but the impact of a larger private sector debt to GDP ratio would have very positive impact on our rating, on our ability to raise international capital. And as a nation, we become very strong to deliver on those areas: defense, health, well-being. Those are areas that the government has to invest. Not on, like Mr. Charan said, on bread and biscuits, right. And I would even say hotels, and so many of these sectors we have to just get out, completely get out, and the impact would unleash Indian private sector to grow in scale and size and go global. That's what the unleashing of the animal energies, the entrepreneurial spirit in India would now get a real kickstart if these disinvestments and strategic asset monetization occurs and we become a more productive economy. That productiveness is the key. And I'm really happy even to say that, even in the electricity sector, a major transformation would occur. And that's when the cost of production, manufacturing would come down.
All right, but one of the concerns that I'd like to flag, Mr. Agarwal, many experts have been saying that innovative methods will have to be worked on while dealing with labor unions, while dealing with other trade unions, or even transitioning obligations. What's the way ahead?
You see, labor reforms that have already been done, of course, are a positive step, but generally speaking, there still remains a lot to be done. I think we are losing our place in many industries, our competitiveness, simply because our labor laws do not encourage large factories being set up or the labor force being productively used, in the sense that you are able to remove those workers who are not up to your expectations. All these laws, I think this is a major reason why, for example, to give you just one example, why textile exports have shifted from India practically to the Bangladesh to Bangladesh. The reason is very simple. There they have factories with 10,000 plus workers, and they are able to have the economies of scale plus productivity, which the Indian textile exporter cannot do. Indian garment exporter simply cannot do. And day by day, we have been losing ground, and we have lost the market practically. So unless we take some very strong steps in the labor market, in the labor laws, our competitiveness is going to be the least where it really matters, because where you are able to provide maximum employment is those industries where there is where there is low capex and high employment. And wherever there is high employment, we put roadblocks in the establishment of larger number of workmen. That creates a huge issue. I know that there are some political issues involved. We are already facing a lot of difficulties over the farm laws. But I think government probably is, hopefully is in a process, and we have to sort out these issues if we have to really become competitive. Otherwise, local political sloganeering kills off the economic incentive or kills off our competitiveness is in nobody's interest. The communist countries, if you look at whether it is Vietnam or China, they have made sure that their factories are efficient and their workers are efficient. So are we more socialist or communist than China or Vietnam? So I think this is something that, of course, we have to settle, but probably also we have to understand, yes, it will be not so easy.
All right, and also the fact that the government has simplified labor laws and merged them into courts. But before we end this conversation, Professor Charan, the central government is also talking about giving incentives to the state governments for disinvesting their assets or units. But given the political considerations in the state, how difficult is the task?
Look, I want to just mention one thing. You have seen the reforms that started in our country in 1984-85 and then got a strong impetus in 1991. We are not the only ones. You remember in China, 1978, India and China were at the same level. The reform started there in a big, lots of reluctance even there. But the most reluctance was visible in Russia. And you would remember what was happening in Russia in 78, 79, 80, and all those things that were unfolding in Russia. And finally, they had to do it. Reforms, privatization, disinvestment, that is the order. The private sector has to become part of the journey towards development and becoming a great nation again. Just 3 to 4% of the country working for reforms, where 97% of the country just waiting for the directions coming from that place. No, that's not the way. Just imagine 100% of the country moving forward. Now, when the center is taking such initiatives, which are really positive and which will be showing the results to rest of the country, it is obvious that the state governments have to also march hand in hand with the central government. There will be challenges, but as I look at it, once the results are visible and once debate takes place and there's a mutual consent that is the journey that we need to undertake, the trade unions, as you were discussing, also understand the advantages that the private sector starts moving forward, the profit opportunities are there for everybody, and the country progresses. Now, in a situation like this, when the country progresses, what do you see? You see lots of employment taking place, high quality salaries and jobs becoming available. You find lots of foreign country participation happening in our own country, and overall the standard of the country improves. So once we are able to market this idea and tell the people that it is mutually beneficial for everybody, this is the path. The only thing is that you could probably be worrying about that somebody in the statement say that in these difficult times, is disinvestment possible? May not be possible.
All right, sir. All right. And of course, the government has been saying that disinvestment for boosting economic growth and not plugging fiscal deficit. And of course, the motto of the government remains that minimum government and maximum governance. On that note, thank you so much for joining us. That's all we have for you in Reset India. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha TV.